This is Judge Joe Brown. Maybe I'll tell you a whole lot of stuff you never knew. Watch the whole interview here on INeverKnewTV.com Premium.
Kwanzaa promotes powerful principles like unity, self-determination, collective work, responsibility, creativity, faith, and much more, right? However, some question the intentions behind this creation, suggesting that it may have been designed to incriminate black people with the support from SIS unit and the FBI. What are your thoughts on the origins and purpose of Kwanzaa?
SIS unit was a Special Investigative Services unit of LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department. I went to the first Kwanzaa. It was in Leimert Park, 1966. And I noticed something was going on. Some of the people with his organization were walking around taking shorthand notes. Not long after that, the FBI started hauling in a lot of us students, and they started questioning us verbatim about, did you say so-and-so? What if I did? You know, free speech, MF. You know, First Amendment, MF. I have my rights, MF. Don't use that language. So it's a crime now? You know, this kind of thing was going on. And see, what Kwanzaa was designed for is to get black folk talking, because Ron Karenga was a snitch. He informed on the black community. He pushed this Swahili thing, and that's not even really an African language. Swahili is a pidgin language that the Arabs and the Dutch came up with, using some elements of Bantu so they could carry out in the mid to late 19th century the ivory trade on the east coast of Africa, and also the still continuing slave trade that was going on up until the beginning of the 20th century there. So it's unholy, and the first time I ran into the Maulana Ron Karenga, he was Ron Everett, and he was student body president at LA Community College, and he had a Jamaican accent instead of brothers, there's much that the black man needs to know. Howsomever, it's not at all necessary for you to trouble your head, because I, Maulana, will teach you. Maulana, teach on that. So what was going on is in 1967, 68, 69, there was this big thing about black history, black studies. And at UCLA, we were trying to set up a black history department, and Chicanos were trying to do the same thing, the Asians and Native Americans. And we took over a building that they were going to tear down called Campbell Hall. So I recruited John Huggins, who became Minister of Information for the Southern California chapter of the party, Bunchy Carter, who had formerly led the Slawsons as a gang. He had done some time. He went in illiterate. He did what Malcolm did, inspired by Malcolm. He said he memorized Webster's dictionary, and he came out quite literate and wrote poetry, and I recruited him to the school. You got Geronimo Pratt, G. He had done 4 tours in the NAM. He was a Green Beret sergeant. He was a smart guy. Elaine Brown, who'd been a secretary at UCLA, we recruited her. Nathaniel Clark, brought them all in. They were Panthers. Okay, so we were setting up this black history program. Some wanted to call it studies, but we said history, but studies, whatever. And Ron Karenga wanted to come in and take it over. And he wanted to set up a program in what we called Usology to inculcate students with his dogma, with this us organization. Everywhere we are, us is. And we had done something that was interesting. I'd mentioned earlier that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Big Lou Alcindor, was a classmate of mine. And when we got to UCLA in 1965, there were, with our freshman class, 145 black students out of 62,000 full-time students. 73 grad students and 72 undergrads, and there had been more black students at UCLA when Jackie Robinson, Don Barksdale, and Kenny Washington were there back in the late 1930s. Okay, So we did something. We formed the BSU in early 1966, and we started doing some things, and we got the faculty to commit to letting us get in a block of 250 black students, which drastically expanded to 145 that were in at that point in time. The first block of 250 students we got in through an affirmative action program that we conceptualized and came up with, one of the first in America, which is, by the way, what we drafted looked almost exactly like Justice Roberts' majority opinion supposedly outlawing affirmative action. It didn't. It just returned it to being race neutral, which, when crafted, worked out to the same thing. But in any event, we got in the second group of 250 students, but we were lax on that group, and they weren't too strong. So Ron Karinga started slapping some of them across the head, threatening them, and particularly alarmingly intimidating the young black co-eds. So we had a series of meetings at Campbell Hall that were really hostile about this whole thing. The Panther Party, FOI from the Nation of Islam, the Nation of Islam generally, the Black Student Alliance, and the Black Student Union. We were unalterably opposed to what we thought was a sickness through the US organization to try and impose this personality-centered cult on the people, all right? So there had been some meetings that were very hostile leading up to this. And on the day in question, I was there, and the meeting broke up. It was about high noon. There were 42 people left in the cafeteria that was still there at Campbell Hall. Elaine Brown and I had just walked out of the place, started upstairs, and myself and one other person, we had offices on the third floor. Well, what was going on down there on the first floor, at the same time somebody kicked in the doorways, put 4 bullets in the back of my chair, and the same with the other guy. We heard it, we came down, Lane and I, and these 4 guys were running down the hallway, ran right in front of us as we came out the stairwell. John Huggins, I could see set up, and he took a .357, fired 6 shots, hit one of these guys in the back of the shoulder, but he didn't slow down, they ran out. John collapsed, and I went in there, and blood started bubbling out of his mouth. Bunchy was on one arm, his elbow. He was moaning, and then he collapsed. We got people out of the building, and shortly thereafter, the campus police hit the place, and then LAPD, and then interestingly enough, we had a black vice chancellor who was the acting chancellor of now almost 70,000 full-time students, and he was having a meeting with some visiting chancellors from Europe in the chancellor's lunch room, dining hall. And LAPD kicked in the door, stuck a shotgun in his chest, and marched him in handcuffs from the administration building over to Campbell Hall, and he got handcuffed to a chair like the rest of us did for almost 3 hours. And it was no question as to the identity of the suspect. The 42 witnesses, most of them knew the 4 assailants by name. Several people told LAPD where their mothers lived and where they could find them. So Johnny Cochran wound up representing one of them that surrendered himself as an accessory, and another one who was his twin brother. And they got convicted of second-degree murder. They were sent to a penal camp. They walked off after 2 days, And 48 hours later, the All Points Bulletin, the APB, was dismissed against them. And a year after that, I saw both of them at a function that was being held at the Palladium on Hollywood Boulevard. A guy named Ayuko Babu, who for years ran the Pan-African Film Festival in LA, myself and several other people, we were raising money for Frelimo, the Mozambique guerrillas. We had actually gotten them a shipment of brand new combat boots and had a whole DC-8 airliner filled up with them, and the State Department seized all of them because they didn't favor the guerrillas in Mozambique, Frelimo. So we were raising money. We had Aretha Franklin, Pharaoh Sanders, Oscar Brown Jr., Gene Pace. We had Stevie Wonder, Taj Mahal. They did a concert that lasted from 7:30 in the evening until 6:45 a.m. the following morning. Stevie was tremendous. They all volunteered to do it for free, and we did raise a considerable amount of money for Frelimo. Well, the US organization wanted to be paid $5,000 for a boot dance, which would be about $60,000, $70,000 in today's money. The interesting thing is, as I'm walking around in the audience, when who do I see? The Ali twins, who were convicted of being accessories to the murder of John Huggins and Bunchy Carter at UCLA. I said, what the hell are you doing here? Oh, we just walked off. 25 years later, they tried to turn themselves in because they got tired of looking over their shoulders, and California said, we aren't interested, go on about your business. So they wound up serving 2 days in a penal forestry camp, and that's it.
How bad, I spoke to Professor James Smalls, right? And he was telling me how bad informants were during that time. Like, how bad was it with informants during that time?
Years later, through Freedom of Information, I requested information, and I'm looking at the redacted list of organizations I'm familiar with. I said, God damn. Said, there are more people redacted than named in here. So I said, I know who this is because they're describing them. I know who that is from the description. Said, hell, they had more informants than they had legit members in there. See, when we get these calls for unity right now, people just don't understand. You just cannot unify with everybody because they look like you, because for a number of reasons. They got caught with drugs and they're trying to escape doing time. They've been stealing, writing bad checks. They're just snitches. They're trying to pimp the whole situation and they want to get out of it. You can't trust people. You can't unify with somebody without high peril when you're actually trying to do something to change the system, because the system's ruthless. Bolden, Abraham W. Bolden, was just trying to say, hey, this is wrong. These Secret Service people are being laggard here. There's high danger. So we're going to go jack him up because we don't want him informing on us or spilling the beans, so to speak. We don't like this, so we're going after these people because we look at them as a threat to what we are doing. It might be just misappropriating public funds because too many elected officials steal. It might be like Karenga upsetting this plan to take over and get colleges to teach usology, masquerading in his black studies. It might be Professor Crenshaw trying to get a hustle going to get tenure by coming up with CRT when actually what she's doing is damn near plagiarizing something that's from 1967, a black studies, black history program that some students and black faculty came up with years ago with a different purpose. All kinds of things are going on. So until somebody has demonstrated that you can trust them, there's no reason to. Now, there's a book called The Glass House Tapes 1 and 2. I have a new paperback copy. But if you want to get one of those now, the books range from $1,500 to $2,500.
Why is that?
Louis Tack is rare. Louis Tackwood, I knew him. We thought the brother had just gotten back from the NOM where he was a medic, and things happened because people went out on patrols in the communities. Sometimes it got hot and hostile, and the US organization was going around killing activists in the black community. And LAPD wound up admitting when they were investigating these two homicides, they say, hey, we can't meet up at the precinct. So we have to meet someplace else because people on our side are with these folk and they're telling them everything that's going on. Our lives are in danger and yours are in danger and everybody's in danger. And they wound up finding about 15 bodies buried on a rural property that US was controlling, and some of my friends were those that were buried that had turned up missing over the years. So it was a dangerous thing. But all of this going on, we got to the point where you are looking at everybody sideways because you don't know who the crooks are. Now back to Louis Tackwood. He's treating people for these injuries that are occurring, right? Well, when I was in law school, for extra credit, I wrote this murder trial, right? So I'm taking notes on how this works. I intend if I got to do it, I'm going to practice criminal trial law. I said, that's Louis Tackwood. What the hell? Is he being a snitch or just a witness? What's your name? My name is Louis Tackwood. What is your position? I'm a lieutenant with the SIS squad at LAPD. I said, oh, hell. Damn. Damn. Not an informant, not a snitch, but Lieutenant Tackwood. Oh, hell. But he didn't tell everything he knew. Now, in the book, it's interesting. Angela Davis, who was a personal friend of mine, he details how Ronald Reagan was telling everybody when he was the governor that University of California was infiltrated with communists. The LA Times, which was a totally different kind of newspaper back then, said, BS, find one. So he came up with Angela Davis. He and Evel Younger, who had been the district attorney for Los Angeles County and then attorney general for the state of California. And people said, Angela Davis, oh, really? Well, she had been, she'd been a member of the Che Lumumba Club. Yeah, but she wasn't but a 17-year-old freshman. That's not being a communist. So Tackwood says, I got instructed to help set her up. So he said, I got the burglary squad. We went and broke into her home and we took her 6 weapons and named them. I'd seen them. She'd shown them to me. I worked on one of them that needed repair, so I was familiar with them. I said, okay, he's not lying because he's talking about that. Yeah, okay. And he described what her place was like. I'd been over there, so I said, oh, hell, this dude, yeah, all right. So he talks about how he got this 15-year-old, and I was acquainted with this 15-year-old. He was a little unhinged, and he was the blood kin brother of one of the Soledad brothers that was up in Northern California in a penitentiary, and they had had some disturbances up there, so they were going to put him on trial. Tackwood details how he wired this kid up and convinced him that everybody was depending upon him, and he got the van, Tackwood said, and he got the weapons from the LAPD burglary squad who had stolen them from Angela Davis, and he loaded up the van and told the kid that he had to pull this off. Everybody was dependent on him. He goes in there with the guns, or some of the guns, and the guys there said, what the hell's going on? He said, well, we're here to break you out. Tackwood detailed the story that he had planted in the kid's mind and how it was supposed to go. They wound up having the Kern County Courthouse shootout, and the rest became history. He details that. There's also a thing, there was a guy named Franco, I guess he was a captain for the Black Panther Party, but He also dabbled in a few drugs, so they wanted to get rid of him. So in the book he talks about, or in part 2, he talks about how they put him in a cell next to some drug dealers, high-level drug dealers, and he got to saying something, bitch so-and-so, he finked on me, snitched on me. Who you talking about? Diggs. Franco Diggs. Yeah, that's him, no good so-and-so. He snitched on me. So he says they pulled off a scene of showing that he got roughed up and all this other stuff. Then they took him out, shoved him down the hallway. Said, then they dropped the charges on the 2 in the cell next to him who were the targets of his misinformation. And within a week, Franco Diggs was dead. Myself and some of the other activists, we went to the funeral. And it was bad what was going on, so people couldn't trust each other. So here is somebody that was always at everything, and you find out this guy wasn't just a snitch, he was a lieutenant with SIS unit. You see, you find out from dealing with Ron Karenga all of the treachery that he had been pulling off through the aegis of the US organization. He wound up doing a year in jail, 1 year, 1 day in jail. He got convicted of torturing some black women that he thought were trying to poison him. So,
famous story.
Yeah, and then he gets out, and within a month, he's a tenured professor at the state university system. Yeah, what time is that? So when we had the first Million Man March, it was interesting that Minister Farrakhan called him up and said, Brother Ron Karenga, there are a lot of hostilities, but in the interest of reconciliation and peace, we'll overlook that. You might want to come up and make some remarks to the people, which he did. But now he gets himself enshrined through this fake holiday of Kwanzaa that he makes up relying upon a slave language. A pidgin language is not really an African language to facilitate a slave and ivory trade on the East African coast. And the whole enterprise came up as an opportunity to get better information from the black community to keep it down. See, interestingly enough, we had the Watts Uprising, a.k.a. the Watts Riot in August 1965. I'm going to tell you a quick story. My first real girlfriend lived very closely proximate to where the stuff broke out. She lived on 116th Street, okay? And I was waiting on her to get back, and her mother asked me to run to the corner store, walking distance, get something, loaf of bread, carton of milk, stuff like that. So I do that, and I come out. Where you from, man? I said, I'm independent. That's all right. And I just stood out there and watched. Where you from, man? About town. You good? Where you from? De La Soul. You good? Where you from? De La Soul. Where you from? Dale Viking. Make your run, man. Bam, bam, bam. Fired some caps at him. Damn. Well, we had the Watts Uprising. And about a month after that, this guy's still out there. He just hangs on the corner, literally. Same guy walked by. He said, hey, man. Dude said, what you want, man? He said, I want to apologize, man. I didn't know what I was doing, man. He said, I didn't mean to do that, man. Popped them caps on you, man. He just said, that was just stupid, man. And then he said, yeah, man, all right. Burn, baby, burn. And they shook hands. That was the thing. Montague the Magnificent, he was a DJ. He'd come up with that a couple of years before, about 1963. Yeah, 4 more bars for Compton, man. 4 more bars for Watts, man. 4 more bars for Crenshaw, man. Burn, baby, burn. So that got adopted as the saying. But you see, those kind of things were going on. So what wound up happening is people started taking control of their lives and destinies. They ran LAPD out of South Central LA. It wasn't called that then. And they had to send in 14,000 troops in the National Guard Division. I mean, they had 1917 Brownings on bipods with live ammo belts, you know. Clank, clank, clank. Oh, you know, I have a pass from Captain or Colonel so-and-so to help deliver food. Okay, I'm holding it between my two knuckles. It looks legit. All right, go on. Thank you. So can you give me here, take this. So they had little flags you could tie to your radio antenna, you know, official business. So you didn't get shot. They had, the freeway system was used as barricades. They had machine guns set up so you could cover this and cover that. They locked it down, but the people that run LAPD out of there, and the interesting thing was, is in the 2 years after the riots, we only had 2 black-on-black killings, and that was girlfriend or wife shot husband or boyfriend by some jealousy. I guess you can't stop that. There were no robberies, no rapes, no burglaries, no assaults. It was peaceful, and when LAPD came in there, they rode 6 deep and looked straight ahead, didn't look at anybody. But they put a stop to that by infiltrating all of the community organizations and activities so nobody could trust anybody, and it just quickly went downhill. The gangs were rampant. April, May, June, July 1965. September, October, November thereafter, there were no gangs, no need. And we took it as slum clearance. You burnt down all of the dilapidated buildings. They stood out in front of Jewish businesses, Asian businesses. If they treated you okay and said, this guy's okay, this guy's not. So they had massive slum clearance. They cleaned up everything, started building new structures, had organizations, had self-help things, cooperatives that were developed. That was 66, 67. They had the first Watts Festival. 66, there was a lot of community spirit, but by 1969, people had been that rapidly disillusioned because of the infiltration, the snitches, and all of the rest of it. And I was helping to run a playground, and I started seeing something which was happening late 1960s, 69, and then when I started substitute teaching in school, 71, 72, what you wound up getting was the gang started resurfacing, and they started having vice lords, Crips, Bloods, gangster disciples instead of Slausons, Dale Vikings, businessmen, Bobtown, De La Soul, like they'd had before. As a matter of fact, on the playground I was with, we had a very interesting 14-year-old who was a brilliant kid, and he used to work for us. And we had a 12-year-old that was a volunteer. The 12-year-old became the singer Barry White, and the 14-year-old that was working for us became Tookie Williams, who helped form the Crips out there. Now, it was kind of foul what happened to him. Schwarzenegger should have commuted his sentence to life in the penitentiary because Tookie wrote 6 books for children that got acclaimed, and he was trying to spread to the kids what we were trying to spread to him. We tried to get him out of the hood, but his mama still wanted that check, so she wouldn't let him, so he couldn't get out of the swamp, so he just became the baddest alligator in the swamp. Now, reason Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't pardon him, Tookie was an embarrassment because they both used to work out at Gold's Gym in Santa Monica. So how's the governor going to explain that he used to spot for or get spotted by somebody's on death row? So he's the last person executed on California's death row. Interestingly, I have a little updated story. About 2 years ago on Tate Street it is probably one of the most dangerous places in Memphis, but they have community who is now patrolling that area to keep it safe and orderly, like we once did out in South Central back in the mid-'60s. Well, on this particular day, people said, Judge, you can't go down there. Them young gangsters down there. So I walked down there anyway. And I looked at it as, hey, they can work for me. You know, I'm the village chieftain. These are the young warriors in the village. So it turned out to be Crips. So I said, let me shake your hand. So I started getting these little weak handshakes that a 9-year-old girl would be embarrassed. Man, what's wrong with you, man? Shake my hand. What you mean? I said, Tookie would have crushed your fool hand. What you say, Tookie got you Tookie name in your mouth? I said, because he used to work for me when he was 14. So I talked to him about 30 minutes, and it was interesting. I started talking to him about manhood. Bam, man, the light just went on. You know, they were dead in it. And then I left, and then I got some interesting information. The next day, they shot somebody in the head twice, standing 10 feet from where I was talking to them. See, in other words, we are the most violent thing on this planet. So that's ordinary human condition. So you have to harness that and give it a purpose and a cause. And what I found when I was on the criminal bench and when I was practicing criminal law is if you gave somebody who was defending a cause and a purpose, they'd stop being criminals.